And you can't run a system like that. You have to have an overarching government that receives the funds and redistributes it in a fair and equitable way. Have you ever heard that before? Well, what they didn't realize is that all those names that I just said, instead of like the land barons of Europe hoarding money and passing it down from generation to generation, instead they built the infrastructure of this nation. They put in the transcontinental railroad. They built factories and textile mills. They built the mechanism that created the most powerful and dynamic middle class the world has ever seen, which rapidly took us to the pinnacle. They built universities and museums and charitable organizations, because that has been the nature of Americans. We have always been generous. Nobody is starving on the streets. We've always taken care of them. We have churches, which actually are a much better mechanism for taking care of the poor, because they are right there with them. This is one of the reasons that we give tax deductions to churches, because they do that. So why is the government trying to duplicate what they're supposed to be doing? You know, we need to start thinking smartly about the way that we use our resources, use our money. And, you know, in 2009, 40 of the wealthiest families in America pledged to give away half of their wealth to charity. Go someplace else in the world and ask the 40th wealthiest families to give away half their wealth. They'll look at you like you got 6 heads. This is an American phenomenon. We take care of our own. We always have. It is not the government's responsibility. It is our responsibility as citizens. And then, as long as we're talking about fairness, let's talk about taxes. You know, some people criticize me at the prayer breakfast for bringing up God and the Bible. I mean, it is a prayer breakfast, right? I don't understand that. But at any rate, you know, if God thinks proportionality is fair, who are we to say that it is unfair? The minute you begin to deviate away from proportionality, you begin to inject your own philosophy. And that is always going to lead you in one direction or another. I think that's why God had a program like that. You make $10 billion, you put in $1 billion. You make $10, you put in $1. You know, the guy who paid $1 billion just put in $1 billion times more than the other guy, but they get the same rights. What could be fairer than that? That's ridiculous. Now, I'll tell you what is not fair. What is not fair is when you exempt some people and you say, there, you poor little thing, you don't have to pay anything, we'll take care of you. You know what? To me, that's very offensive, having grown up poor, because what you're saying is that I, the superior elite one, will take care of you. Why? Because you see, that superior elite group needs to be superior and elite. And they can't be superior and elite unless you have a whole bunch of people down there groveling around. So you keep them down there by feeding them. You know? But the other ulterior motive is, if everybody doesn't have skin in the game, then you can just persecute this 1% or this 2% or this 5%. If everybody has skin in the game, you have to be responsible. Because if you come talking about raising taxes, you're raising taxes on everybody, you better have a darn good reason. Doesn't matter about 1 or 2%, but it really matters about everybody. That's what's fair. And then, just briefly, I don't have time to really go into it, but let me tell you something. Healthcare, you know, 1/6 of our economy, if the government can control that, they can control just about everything. we need to understand what is going on, because there are much more economic models that can be used to give us good health care than what we have now. And we were asleep at the wheel to let it happen, but we have to find a way still to make it work. And if we have to work within the framework of the Affordable Health Care Act, fine. If we can find a way to defund it, fine. But we have to find more efficient ways. Think about this. 80% of the encounters between a patient and a healthcare provider could easily be handled by a health savings account. 80% of the encounter, without the need to insinuate a third party or bureaucracy, which sucks out at least a third of the money. And, there are ways that we can do this. We can use bridge insurance and catastrophic insurance. Some of the, I don't want to call them morons, but it's something similar to that, who say, well, Carson just talks about HSAs. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to have catastrophic health care? Read the book. Read the book, America the Beautiful, and some other things that I've written. It'll show you how to do that. But obviously, I'm thinking about those things. I mean, it just, I don't know, it's almost laughable, some of the things that I hear people say who criticize you. They say, he's a neurosurgeon, so he couldn't know anything about economics. It's not brain surgery. And I can tell you this much, even as a lowly brain surgeon. If you have the highest corporate tax rates in the world, then of course corporations are going to have money elsewhere. Corporations are not in business to be social welfare organizations. They are there to make money. And a wise government knows how to use that to their advantage. There is a ton of money outside this country and inside this country just waiting to be unleashed to make all kinds of jobs and opportunities if we just treat them as our friends and not as our enemies. And finally, we have to resist this war on God. I mean, people don't want to talk about God, and don't you ever dare mention Jesus Christ. And this is supposed to be a country where we have freedom of religion and freedom of speech. It is absolutely absurd. Let's let everybody believe what they want to believe. And that means PC police. Don't you be coming down on the people who believe in God and who believe in Jesus. If they want to put something out that shows their belief, they have every right to do that. And we need to know, we need to understand that we are not each other's enemies in this country. And it is only the political class that derives its power by creating friction. It is only the media that derives its importance by creating friction, that uses every little thing to create this chasm between people. This is not who we are. We have much more in common with each other than we have apart. And we have to be smart enough to understand that. And we have to live by godly principles of loving your fellow man, of caring about your neighbor, of developing your God-given talents to the utmost so that you become valuable to the people around you, of having values and principles that guide your life. And if we do that, not only will we remain a pinnacle nation, but we will truly have one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah.
How how do you think it went? Went okay?
I
Think it went okay?
think it was fantastic.
All right, I'm going to play the role of Dick Cavett, a friend of mine, and ask you some questions. But I can't think of anything. Did you announce that you're leaving medicine?
Oh, I didn't announce that. In 106 days, I will be retiring. And, I'll be 62 years old in September. And I strongly believe that there's a reason that pilots are asked to retire before they start crashing airplanes.
I can see you got... He's got the shakes. I can see it. I'm up close here. He's got the shakes. Yeah, you need to get out of that. Quick.
So I'd much rather quit while I'm at the top of my game.
Yeah.
And there's so many more things that can be done.
Really? All right. So that's the big announcement. Dr. Carson's getting out of medicine. I've got a little announcement to make.
Okay.
You're getting out of brain surgery. In about 100 days, I'm going to be getting into brain surgery. Yeah, I'm going into medicine. And, how tough could it be, right? It's not brain surgery. So, obviously, people are asking the question, are you leaving medicine so that you can do other things, maybe in the political sphere? Would you at least guardedly say possibly?
Well, I would say, I'm very dedicated to education of the next generation. And I encourage everybody to go to carsonscholars.org and look us up and see how you can get involved. Once we get that taken care of, who knows what I might do.
Yes, you can tell. I was going to say, this is a very sophisticated political audience, and they can tell that you've entered politics because you're not answering that question straight. Obviously, we can see what's happening, and you can't say anything publicly. And let me say, if you're looking for a white guy on the ticket, I'm your man.
I will just say I'm only interested in the brain.
Only interested in the brain. My brain's pretty pink. We'll talk backstage. What do you see happening? I mean, I spoke about religious freedom. I really do believe that we're having a conversation in America right now, at least some of us are having a conversation about the idea that we are headed to a cliff fiscally, that if we don't get the debt under control, if we don't reverse engines, if we don't feed the free market and deregulate and enable the market to do what it's meant to do, we will lose our freedom. But I really do believe that religious freedom is the thing that nobody's talking about, and that they're somehow linked. They're linked. I mentioned Os Guinness's book of Free People's Suicide. In there, he shows the inextricable link, this golden triangle, which the founders knew. You talk about education.
Right.
What scandalizes me, Dr. Carson, is that at least 2 generations. I went to school in the 70s. No one taught us about the founders' idea of ordered liberty.
Right.
How can you have a generation of Americans and another generation of Americans really be America if we don't even know? I mean, because to be an American, it's not your blood type, it's not your ethnic group, it's an idea.
Exactly.
And once the citizens don't even know what it is that they have and what they're supposed to protect and promulgate, how can we be America?
Well, that was the reason that I wrote America the Beautiful.
Did you write a book?
I wrote a book.
Can we get that? Is that possible? Can we get that on Amazon? Or
You're not supposed to mention that.
how do I get this wonderful product?
Because then the left says, you're only there to promote your book.
It's obvious that you don't care about anything except money, so go ahead.
Although,
Yeah, it's obvious. All these doctors, I know, go ahead.
although I do appreciate the fact that people have bought it, and it's last week was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. That was good.
Let me say, speaking as an author, I deeply resent you. Bonhoeffer, I believe, is available. Yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
But the fact of the matter is, because people don't know our history, because they don't know who we are, they don't recognize those forces which are changing.
That's the point. No, that was effectively my point. I thought you were listening.
Yeah, I was. I appreciate the fact that you negated the need for me to say several things. It was
Good,
great.
good.
We're good.
But you still went over time. Did you know that? And we're just about out of time right now. Well, in the few minutes we have left, let me just say how wonderful it was to hear your speech. I was in the room at the National